Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cluster API weekly office hours meeting. It is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, February 14th. We are a project of SIG Cluster Lifecycle, and therefore we abide by the general Kubernetes community rules of conduct, which you're probably very familiar with. But it basically boils down to let's try not to talk over each other, try to use the raise hand feature, and generally let's be as welcoming and friendly as we can. Not that we generally have any issues in this area, but that's what we like to say at the beginning of the meeting. Also at the beginning of the meeting, if anyone is here for the first time or first time in a while and wants to say hello and maybe why they're here, this is a great time to do that. So I'll be quiet for a few seconds and please feel free to unmute. Troy, Connor, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Part of the cluster API release team. First time at this meeting, I always miss it. I find out that I missed it by seeing the recording here because I want to see and understand the situation. I think Stephen has a PR out that was supposed to be fixing something, and he was going to discuss it today. So I want to get a little bit more insight around that. And thank you.
Great, welcome, Troy. Anyone else? All right, next we go on to open proposal readouts. I don't think there are any, but let's check. Nothing's been added. Do we have anything to discuss there? Otherwise, we'll move on to discussion topics. All right, Fabrizio, you have the first item about KubeCon EU.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, let me apologize because I have a lot of things on the agenda, but especially second topic is a fun one. So let's try to get the first topic sorted quickly. So there was a SIG TL meeting yesterday, and they reminded a couple of stuff with regards to the next KubeCon. So the first one is that there will be again the Kubernetes meet and greet session. If you never attended, this is a session where a huge number of Kubernetes maintainers are in a room, and usually folks can go there and ask questions to the maintainers. It is a good opportunity to chat with folks interested in the project, but also to chat with other maintainers, because during the event it's kind of hard to have so many maintainers in the same room. So I highly recommend that to someone interested in the project to go there. And if you want to go there representing this SIG, just add your name to the issue that is linked there. And this is the first one. Slightly related, the registration for Contributor Summit is still open. Usually it remains open till 1 or 2 weeks before the event. And also in this case, if you want to be part of the event stuff, please reach out to me. I will point to a Google Doc where volunteers are writing down their name.
Great. Any questions about meet and greet staffing or the contributor summit? I think not. I'm not watching chat, so if something relevant is said. All right, I'll open it up. And next topic is yours as well, Fabrizio. This is why a lot of people are here.
Exactly. So we finally had time to investigate an ST issue. And the TLDR is that it requires an urgent fix, both for copy 1.6 and main. This fix will be included in the next patch release, and for making this as fast as possible, we deferred the patch release that was due this week to next week. So I'm trying to explain what happened and how we fixed it. I try to write it down at my best, but if you please stop me if you have questions. So what is the issue? So this issue is a complex issue that involves both API version removal, server-side apply, and how the API server manages the managed field that exists in every Kubernetes object. And what happened is basically, if you have a cluster that was created with v1 alpha 3, there is a good chance that in your managed field, you have an entry with v1 alpha 3 version. Okay. No matter that we went through a long and by the book API removal process, we discovered that some of those v1 alpha 3 entries in managed field stick around. Basically, they never get automatically converted to newer version by the API server. Okay, so what happened when you upgrade to cluster API v1.6 and if you have one of those objects where there is v1 alpha 3 entries in managed field, but v1 alpha 3 is not there anymore because we dropped it in v1 alpha 6, basically you get this error. The request to convert your request basically failed to convert to an invalid group version, and this blocks most of the cluster. Some cluster API controller blocks any client which is trying to use a server-side apply, and so it is a pretty bad one. I continue trying to explain the root cause behind this. So we do not understand fully why some of those v1 alpha 3 entries in managed field stick around. We tried to investigate it, but what we discovered very quickly is that this issue could be triggered by any client using v1 alpha 3 type. So it is not only a problem of controllers, of copy controllers. You can easily recreate the issue with kubectl. The original ticket was basically triggered by a GitHub controller, and literally any client can trigger this issue. So given those information, even if partial, we decided for the fix. And the decision was basically driven by the fact that this issue could impact literally all the cluster API CRs. And there is an almost unlimited number of use cases that can lead to the issue. So it was a kind of pretty bad one. And so we decided, okay, let's have a fix, and then we will figure it out a more elegant solution. And the fix that we decided to do is to restore only API types and conversion for v1 alpha 3 and v1 alpha 4, while keeping those version not served. Okay, this is right enough to not have the error. Okay, please, I know that it is a lot and it's quite complex. Feel free to interrupt me. Some more information. Why we did not detect this in our CI? The issue is that in our CI, we were testing upgrade from cluster API upgrade from one version to another, from A to B. Okay. Unfortunately, to discover the issue that we are talking about, we need a much more sophisticated test that goes from one version to another and to another, so two upgrades. And during this, and And during this upgrade, basically, a version, an API version must be removed. Okay, so we did not have this test, but as part of the fix, we now have it. And so we kind of proved the fix. Nolan, do we know if this is specific to Capi or homogeneous with Kubernetes management? I think that the issue is not for Capi. I think this issue could apply to any controller that remove a CRD. Yeah, also Stefan confirmed my assumption. And what's next? So what is the takeaway for everyone in this room, apart the patch release next week? So for the users of Cluster API, which are on Capi 1.6, we highly recommend to upgrade, and especially if they have all the cluster in their systems. For the providers which are using Cluster API in 1.6 in their own CI, similar recommendation, we recommend to bump to the next patch release of Capi as soon as possible. With regard to Cluster API, we still want to get rid of V1 Alpha 3 and V1 Alpha 4 code from our code base. But yeah, we will do this as soon as we figure it out a way to do it without incurring again in this issue. And I stop myself now because I talked a lot.
I think it was a very clear explanation, at least it mostly made sense to me. Do we have more questions about the details or anything? Vince?
So I just read through this right now today, so it's kind of a busy week, but so what's surprising to me is that well, I guess I have a couple questions. Like, do we know if removing those managed fields from the objects that have them with the old API version, would that allow SSA to continue? Stefan, go ahead.
Yes. So basically what is happening is that if you, from a client perspective, if you do a server-side apply, I mean, managed fields and server-side apply is basically always done in some way, but if the client explicitly enables server-side apply, only if you have the old API version in your managed fields as an entry, only then the API server will call the conversion webhook. And then basically you need to be able to serve those conversion webhooks. So if we basically just go over the objects, iterate over all managed fields and drop everything which is not V1 beta 1, that would work. We just didn't want to jump to that conclusion basically and implement some sort of managed field garbage collector. But it might be one option. In general, I just wonder, like, how is this supposed to work, like, for everyone? The combination of server-side apply and CRDs, and because it can be like the ideal thing that everyone implements is managed field garbage collector.
Yeah, so it is a bit surprising that those, I guess, like if you remove, or I guess even if you unserve those API versions, that those managed fields stick around.
Yeah, I think the API server is not that intelligent.
It seems like either, I mean, maybe this is expected behavior, maybe not. So guess I'm trying to think, like, maybe we should reach out to API machinery to see if this is just an edge case. Okay. Maybe
so, just to say that. So the reason why we went this way essentially because just the absolute easiest way to make it work again, basically within a few days or until the patch release next week. That is definitely not like the midterm or long-term solution that we want.
Okay, I reopened the issue for now because, yeah, I understand it was closed, but I think we should close it once we find a natural solution.
Should
And
we maybe
helping.
open like a fresh one? I mean, that was
I don't
basically
know. This
like
has a lot of context.
yeah, it's mostly like an
But
end user bug from that perspective. I think what we should have is basically a new issue looking for a way to cleanly get rid of the API versions and not. So I would prefer a new issue, just clearly scope to what we are looking for.
So I do want to ping Jordan from API Machinery on this issue to see like if you can have a brief look. At least you can tell us like, yes, this is the expected behavior. You have to handle this yourself, or no, this is a bug somewhere else, and then we can continue with the new issue. That
makes sense.
Cool.
Cool. Any other questions? Thanks for taking that on, Vince. Something in chat. When the app, yeah, let's make sure we raise the visibility of the issue when we do open it. Okay, Fabrizio, you want to continue with the saga?
Yeah, so thank you, Vince, for helping us to reaching out to API Machinery folks. We literally did not have time. So one thing that I really appreciated while dealing with such a complex issue was as many folks as how many folks stepped in, and this shows again how our community can be great when we work together with common goal. And I want to give a couple of special kudos. First of all, to Max, who reported the issue with a lot of details. And this is a great example of how, a simple contribution from everyone can create a lot of from a person or a company can create a lot of value for everyone. And so, and also this is a huge reminder that the more we have folks testing on new release and possibly on alpha and beta release, the more of the quality of our project improves. So yeah, this is kind of a call out for provider. Please help test releases using beta and RC release. The more we are, the better. Then I want to thanks Steven and the entire release team who quickly adapted their schedule to ensure that the fix will be released soon next week. And also want to really thanks Stefan, who worked on the fix. It is if you have time to look into those PR, they are huge PR to revert the API versions, and there are a few really interesting things in those PR that I want to point out. So the first is that we restored the API types, not in the place where they were before, but we restored it as internal packages. So the API surface of the project is still the same. We are not scope, and we basically stick to what we declared in the deprecation notice. Second, in my opinion, the most valuable thing is that while doing this work, Stefan implemented 2 end-to-end tests to ensure that the fix work, and this end-to-end test will really help in future when we come out with the proper solution for this issue and the removal of the types. And yeah, and I want also there is a small piece of art in this end-to-end test. Stefan figured it out a really clean way to restart the Kubernetes controller manager, which is a static pod, by stealing the lease from the controller manager. This super fun trick, and if you are interested, look at it. And yeah, and this is about, and while we are at kudos, I also got a feedback internally today about the quality of our release notes and documentation about our release. And this goes again to the release team and other contributors, but it's really great to have those kind of feedbacks from people around. So thank you everyone from the work on release notes and the work on the issue today.
Great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. CAPI is definitely our standard for release notes as well as PRs and all that. That's great. Any questions about this issue? The patch release? I don't see anything else in chat, so let's move on. David, you want to talk about a Helm chart?
Yeah, I just you know, I posted this issue a while back, just that, you know, for the user experience side of things, for people to not have to do the current experience, which is cluster CTL, you know, to generate a template, and then you're going back and looking at the template and then trying to manually modify values and things for creating what you need to create. We want to have a hosted Helm chart, at least just for the managed clusters experience, so that people can, if they, for instance, use CAPI operator, you really only need Helm. You don't really ever have to touch cluster CTL. You could just, you know, install the management cluster with Helm on the operator, and then, you know, Helm add the Helm chart for the managed cluster, and then just Helm install, and then you get a cluster going, right? So that's the kind of rough desired experience. But as I've been made aware, there's quite a heavy investment in customize, and so, you know, we in CapZ, we ideally not want to maintain a customized AKS flavor thing and an AKS Helm chart flavored thing. So we're thinking about, like, at least just for the AKS piece, replacing the customized flavor, so to speak, with a Helm chart that we officially host and support for people to use. So yeah, I just, you know, I guess bringing that up, seeing if there's any feedback, reservations, suggestions, or whatever.
Anyone have any feedback? Fabrizio?
Yeah, probably a quick one. So I think that what you use inside the project is really up to the project. We use a customize because this is mostly where we started when moving to controller runtime skeleton project, and we are going on with that. With regard to use a Helm chart to release to deploy a management cluster, I think this goes back to the discussion that led to the implementing the cluster API operator. So usually the issue is not when you install the first time, but when you upgrade, and you have to face issue like ordering, or issue like migrating CRD that to handle CRD removal, like the issue that we faced in control in set manager, stuff like that. So definitely possible. There are folks that are doing, but yeah, there are edge cases that we face it along the line.
It sounds like that, but if I understand, you're talking about more for the cluster API operator, not necessarily the fact that we use a Helm chart for the cluster being deployed, right?
I think that they are related. So because somehow the way you package and the way you deploy is linked to the way you upgrade. And so this was my heads up. So if you plan to manage your cluster only with Helm, maybe you need some to figure it out how to do stuff like CRD migration or similar programs. But it's not impossible. So the API, the cluster API operator is a middle ground where basically gives you a very simple YAML, and behind there is a controller that takes care of those problems like Cluster Cattle does.
Yeah, I think I totally get that there's more challenges using at least the current status of the operator to deploy the to deploy CAPI and the provider. I get that there's more challenges there, but in terms of just the resources or the clusters that you deploy, I mean, I don't really see how Helm chart has any different challenges than just manually applying the YAML over the top anyway, right? I mean, that's all you'd be doing. There's really no difference. Yeah.
Sorry, maybe I got this wrong. So if it is also only for the cluster object, I think
Yes.
that this is fire and forget. So that's okay.
Yeah. Cool, Jack.
Yeah, the only caveat there is that Helm is really designed to manage an ongoing life cycle of whatever's in the Helm chart. And so that presents a little bit of a not perfect fit. So we'd have to deal with that. Because as Fabrizio mentioned, with other parts of the CAPI ecosystem, you don't really want to be managing upgrades of your cluster, even if it's only the cluster resources, the provider cluster resources with a Helm upgrade. So I think the key thing to make sure that we keep in mind if we do this in CAPZ is that this is really for installation of the cluster only, and then ongoing maintenance you do with your CAPI pane of glass, as opposed to thinking that Helm is what you use. It's not that it can't work, but then you start having edge cases because you have multiple actors competing for authority.
Yeah, I think the primary use case would be combining either the quick start and or combining with GitOps, but like not the person who uses, let's say, a Helm chart to push deploy to their cluster. Like that's not ideal. So yeah, anyway, cool. Thank you.
Well, thanks, David. Anybody have any more questions about Helm? Potential to use Helm? Stefan?
Yeah, just one short comment if it wasn't mentioned before. I think what it could be usually tricky with Helm is when you want to change things in objects which are typically immutable, like, I don't know, Docker, let's take the Azure example, Azure machine template, etc. But it could be that that's not much a problem with AKS. I mean, if you can just update your control plane object and you can just upgrade your Azure machine pool and that sort of stuff, and you don't really care about. Yeah, I guess QADM config is also mutable, so probably it's fine. But I guess for non-managed classes, it would be more usually a problem because you have to figure out how to rotate templates.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, cool. That brings up the topic that I raised many months ago that Jack had a draft PR on about the mutating webhooks causing challenges with the source of truth in Git. So yeah, I hear you on that one. I don't think we ever got to a resolution on that. Because yeah, it's still possible where, right, you have a source of truth in Git that when you apply it to the cluster, there's something gets modified so that if the management cluster, let's say, went away and then GitOps reapplied it, then it would be different. So yeah, go ahead, Stefan.
Yeah, I meant a slightly different topic. Imagine you have, like, let's say, a regular cluster with cap vSphere or something, and then you create a machine deployment. You have a certain vSphere machine template where you have a specific operating system image configured there. And if you want to change that image, what you usually have to do, you have to create a new vSphere machine template with a different name. Then you have to update the reference that you have in the machine deployment pointing to the vSphere machine template. And after that, you have to delete the old vSphere machine template. I could imagine that it's totally not a thing with managed clusters because I don't know how much of a problem it is with machine pools in general, and also not with managed control planes. But usually if you have, not really usually, but if you don't have a managed cluster, you have usually a Kubernetes control plane, which has a reference to an infrastructure machine template, and you have a machine deployment, which has a reference to the infrastructure machine template and to a Kubernetes config template. And then you run into those sort of problems. It could be that it's, for your case, if it's just about AKS, it's just not a thing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It gets more tricky when you're having to temporarily, add something and then wait and then move something. It's more complicated with the Helm chart. That makes sense. Yeah, I think the Helm chart, it becomes less valuable when you have the self-managed scenarios, because there's just so many combinations, and I feel like the flavor templates is perhaps fine because it's all over the place of what people really want. Anyway, cool. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on Helm? Looks like no. Let me see what the comments. Yes. Okay, we can move on to provider updates. In cluster IPAM has version 0.10. Does anyone want to talk about this? I guess Jakob's not able to be here. Let's go check it out just for fun. Great. Hopefully this is self-explanatory. We can move on to AWS. Nolan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, we plan to do a 2.4.0 release tomorrow. There's going to be a pairing event for some of the newer reviewers and maintainers to learn more about the release process. So yeah, hoping that 2.4 will be out tomorrow.
And the details on the event are in the Slack channel or somewhere? Like
I will go grab them and drop them in here.
Killer. Okay, that's all we had on the agenda, but what else do we want to talk about? Anything else on people's minds? Let me see if there's anything in chat here. We're still talking about Helmy stuff, I think. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I guess we can call it a day. Thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you next week, hopefully.